Hello, Joanne Landers here of Elephant Ears Training. I call my company that because I teach big ears, big listening, elephant ears listening. And I'm going to tell you a story about a participant in a workshop that I facilitated. Monica, I'll call her, was on a 3-day leadership workshop with me. And on this particular day, we were learning what I call full radical listening. And one of the traits of a full radical listener is implementing the 6-second rule. So that's our tip for today, the 6-second rule. What does it mean? It means when you're talking to somebody, they say something and then they pause. Don't jump in as most people do. Most of us are intimidated by silence. Allow silence. Count in your head, 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006. It will seem like forever. Researchers have found that most people don't even wait a second. Most people wait a millisecond, both in their personal lives and work lives when they're listening to someone. By waiting 6 seconds, that allows the person to open up and say even more. That was the tip that we discussed and we practiced, and my homework to the group was to go home and practice it that night. The next morning, Monica came in beaming, and this is the story she told our group. She said she drove home to her small town out in the Fraser Valley, and she did what she always does. She kicked off her shoes, made a cup of tea, sat down with her book, put her feet up on the chair, and began to read. Reading was about her favorite thing. A few minutes later, her 19-year-old son arrived home, and she looked up and said hi, and then went back to the book. Then she looked up again and said, "How was your day?" And he said, "Fine." She said, "Good." And she went back to the book. Then she remembered. Being a conscientious student, Monica remembered her homework, and she knew she had to practice the 6-second rule. So she looked up and said, "Tell me what you did today." And he said, "Well, Mom, we went into Vancouver. We found this great record store we've been hearing about called Scratch Records." And she said, "Well, tell me about it. What kind of music did they have?" And he said, "Well, they had, lots of music." And he looked at her kind of quizzically, kind of surprised. And he said, "They had some of my favorite music." And she said, "Well, what is your favorite music?" So he told her about the 2 groups that he loved the most, and he'd been able to buy their albums that day. One was called Radiohead, and the other was called Death Cub by Cutie. And he came over to the table and she said, "Well, tell me about their music." And he still was looking kind of quizzically at her, but he pulled up a chair and began to tell her about their music. And then he told his mom how that music made him feel. After he'd been talking for a while, he had a twinkle in his eyes. He said, "Mom, you know what? They even had Shania Twain and Garth Brooks albums there. You and I should go sometime." And she smiled. And she continued to listen. And one time she told us how she was just about to leap in again, when again she forced herself to pause for 6 seconds. And she said, "It was quite something. I was quite surprised at how my son opened up in a way that he had never before, about some of his challenges and some of the things he was looking forward to." And she said the conversation went on for a full hour. She ended her story by telling us, "Last night, my son and I connected in a whole new way." There's a writer named Mary Lou Casey who says, what people really need is a good listening to. The 6-second rule, the 6 seconds of silence, is the best kept secret for generating work and family dialogue. Remember, the more you listen, the more you'll be listened to. So my homework assignment for you is to practice the 6-second rule and to send me an email telling me your story. I'm not going to wish you good luck because it's not about luck, it's about practice. So my wish for you is good practice with the 6-second rule.